The note was taped to the fridge in thick black permanent marker, written so boldly it almost looked like a joke at first glance. "Deal with this mess yourself." I stood there staring at it longer than I should have, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less cruel. But they didn't. By mess, they meant my grandmother. And by deal, they meant I was supposed to sit back and watch her fade away quietly like she didn't matter. My name is Ayon, and that was the moment I realized my family had already decided who was expendable. They had all left for the coast early that morning. My parents, my younger sister, even my uncle who hadn't bothered to visit in over 6 years suddenly found time to pack a bag and disappear. I remembered the sound of the front door slamming shut, the engine of the SUV roaring to life, and then silence. Just silence. They didn't leave groceries. They didn't leave money. They didn't even leave a proper explanation. Just that note. The house felt different after they left, colder, emptier, like the walls themselves knew something was wrong. Every step I took echoed louder than usual, like the house was reminding me I was alone now. Completely alone. At least, that's what I thought. The next morning, I went to check on my grandmother, Nani Zubeida. She had been weak for weeks, but I never imagined things had gotten this bad. I found her lying in bed, barely conscious. Her lips were dry and cracked. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, like every inhale was a struggle. Her oxygen tank sat beside her bed, empty. Completely empty. A cold wave of panic rushed through me. There was a glass of water on the table beside her, untouched. A plate of food sat there too, dried out and forgotten. It looked like she hadn't eaten in at least 2 days. 2 days. My chest tightened with guilt so heavy it felt like I couldn't breathe. I had been in the same house, and I didn't even notice. What kind of person does that make me? I rushed back to the kitchen, grabbing my phone with shaking hands. My fingers hovered over the screen as I dialed emergency services. This wasn't something I could handle alone. She needed help, real help. But just as I was about to press call, something stopped me. A hand. Cold. Weak. But firm enough to freeze me in place. I turned around slowly. Nani Zubeida's eyes were open now, staring straight at me. There was something in her expression I had never seen before, not fear, not pain, but something deeper. Something calculated. "Don't call them," she whispered, her voice rough like gravel scraping against stone. I swallowed hard. "Nani, you need a doctor," her grip tightened, surprisingly strong for someone in her condition. "Look under the dresser," she said, her voice barely audible but filled with urgency. "Then you understand why they'll come crawling back." I froze. Nothing about this made sense. But the look in her eyes told me one thing clearly: this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. I hesitated for a moment, my phone still in my hand, the emergency number glowing on the screen. Every instinct inside me screamed to call for help. But the way Nani Zubeida looked at me, it wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was certainty. "Go," she whispered again, her fingers loosening around my wrist. My heart pounded as I slowly lowered the phone. Nothing about this felt right, but something deeper, something I couldn't explain, pushed me forward. I turned and walked toward her bedroom. The air inside felt heavy, almost suffocating. The curtains were half drawn, letting in thin streaks of pale morning light. Everything looked exactly the same as always, and yet completely different. I stepped onto the worn rug beside her bed and crouched down. Under the dresser, I muttered to myself. My hands trembled as I pushed the rug aside. Dust scattered into the air, making me cough. For a second, I almost stopped. This felt like crossing a line, like I was stepping into something I wasn't meant to see. But it was too late to turn back now. I reached under the old wooden dresser. My fingers brushed against the cold floor, then something metallic. I froze. Slowly, I wrapped my hand around it and pulled it out. A small, sealed metal box. It was heavier than it looked, ice cold to the touch, like it had been hidden there for years. My pulse quickened as I stared at it. What is this? I carried it to the bed and sat down, glancing back at Nani Zubeida. Her eyes were half closed now, but I could tell she was still awake, still waiting. Taking a deep breath, I opened the box. Inside were three things. A flash drive. A thick envelope. And a small velvet pouch, tightly tied with an old, worn string. For a moment, I just stared. This didn't look random. This looked planned. Carefully arranged. Like she had been waiting for this exact moment. I picked up the envelope first. It felt heavy, filled with documents. My hands shook slightly as I opened it and pulled out the papers inside. The first page made my breath catch. Bank statements. But not just any account, this was a trust account. A large one. My eyes scanned the numbers again, just to be sure I wasn't imagining things. $2. 8 million. My heart skipped a beat. And then I saw the name attached to it. Mine. Ayan Malik. What? I whispered, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. I flipped through the rest of the documents quickly. Property deeds. Ownership papers. Investment records. 2 houses. A rental apartment building in another city. Stocks connected to my late grandfather's company. This wasn't just money. This was a hidden empire. All this time, Nani Zubeida had been living like she had nothing, wearing the same old clothes, saving every rupee, acting like she barely had enough to survive. Why? Why would she hide something like this? A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just about money. This was about something much bigger. Something my family knew, and I didn't. My eyes slowly shifted toward the flash drive still sitting inside the box. Whatever was on that. I had a feeling it would change everything. My eyes stayed fixed on the flash drive for a few seconds. Something about it made my chest feel tight, like I already knew whatever was inside wasn't going to be simple. I picked it up slowly and walked to my room. My old laptop was still on the desk, covered in a thin layer of dust. I wiped it quickly, plugged in the flash drive, and waited. The screen flickered. Only one file appeared. For Ayan only, don't trust them. A chill ran down my spine. My fingers hesitated over the touchpad. For a moment, I thought about going back, calling for help, pretending I never saw any of this. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. I clicked the file. The video started. There was Nani Zubeida, sitting in her old armchair. She looked different, stronger, sharper. Her eyes weren't weak or tired like they were now. They were focused, calculating. Ayan, she began, her voice clear and steady. If you're watching this, then they've done exactly what I expected. They left me to die. My heart started pounding. She continued, I never forgot what they did to your mother. I froze. What? Her expression hardened. They laughed at her funeral. Your own family. And your father, he forged her will. Took everything that was hers. My grip tightened on the laptop. This couldn't be real. They think they're clever, she said coldly. But I've been watching. Waiting. She lifted a yellow folder into view. Everything you need is already in your hands. The documents. The proof. The truth. My breath became uneven. This wasn't an accident, she continued. Everything that's happening now. I allowed it. I needed them to believe I was weak. The video paused for a second as if she leaned closer. And now, Ayon, it's your turn. The screen went black. Silence filled the room. I sat there, completely still, trying to process what I had just heard. My family, the people I grew up trusting, had been lying all along. Slowly, my eyes moved toward the velvet pouch I had brought with me. With trembling hands, I untied the string and opened it. Inside was a small, old key. I stared at it, my mind racing. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was something else. Something planned. Something dangerous. And for the first time, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. Nani Zubeida didn't want to be saved. She wanted revenge. I didn't sleep that night. The video kept replaying in my mind, every word echoing louder each time. They left me to die. I allowed it, it's your turn. Nothing about this felt real anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, the documents spread out in front of me like pieces of a puzzle I didn't fully understand yet. Bank statements, property papers, signatures, everything pointed to one thing: betrayal. Not small lies. Not misunderstandings. This was planned. Carefully executed over years. My hands moved slowly over the pages until I found something new: handwritten notes. Nani Zubeida's handwriting. Messy in some places, sharp in others, but clear enough to follow. Each line detailed transactions, dates, and names. I read faster, my heartbeat rising with every word. 5 years ago, my uncle, Uncle Rashid, had convinced her to give him power of attorney. He told her it was to help manage her health and finances as she got older. But that was a lie. Since then, him, my father, and my aunt had been draining her accounts slowly. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. They sold one of her properties without her full consent. Moved money into a private company, one registered under a completely different name. A fake name. A cover. So no one would suspect anything. My stomach tightened. This wasn't just betrayal. This was theft. Then I found the worst part. A document clipped to the back. A forged signature. It claimed that Nani Zubeida had transferred the entire trust fund to my cousin, Sanal. Sanal, the same cousin who always acted like she was better than everyone else. The one who once laughed when I said I was working freelance, telling me to get a real job. My jaw clenched. Everything started making sense now. They didn't leave me here because they trusted me. They left because they thought it was over. They believed Nani was going to die soon, and when she did, they would come back, take everything, and no one would question it. A perfect plan. Or at least, it was supposed to be. My eyes slowly shifted to the small key lying on the table. There was a tiny tag attached to it. 2 words written in faded ink: boathouse. Bottom drawer. I stared at it for a long moment. I hadn't been to the boathouse in years. Not since I was a kid. But I knew exactly where it was. And somehow, I knew this key was going to expose everything. The boathouse looked exactly the same, and yet completely different. It stood at the edge of the lake, old wood creaking softly as the wind brushed against it. I hadn't been there in years, not since I was a kid, when my grandfather used to bring me here to fish and tell stories that never quite made sense back then. Now, everything felt different. Quieter. Heavier. I pushed the door open slowly. It let out a long, tired creak, like it had been waiting for someone to return. Dust floated in the air, glowing in the thin rays of sunlight breaking through the cracks in the walls. The smell of old wood and damp water filled my lungs. I stepped inside. Bottom drawer, I whispered to myself. In the far corner, the old wooden dresser still stood where it always had. One of its drawers looked darker than the others, stained, worn, like it had been opened more times than it should have. I walked toward it, my heartbeat growing louder with each step. For a second, I hesitated. Something inside me already knew, whatever was in there would change everything. I pulled out the key from my pocket. My fingers trembled slightly as I slid it into the lock. Click. The sound echoed louder than it should have. I slowly pulled the drawer open. Inside was a thick, leather-bound ledger. I picked it up carefully and opened it. My breath caught instantly. Page after page, it was all there. Every transaction. Every withdrawal. Every date. Every amount. Detailed records of money taken from Nani Zubeida's accounts without permission. Not just rough notes, this was precise. Account numbers. Login locations. Even IP addresses. This wasn't just evidence. This was proof. Legal, undeniable proof. I flipped to the next section. Photos. Clear, printed images. My unsigning documents she later claimed she had never seen. My cousin Sanor standing at a bank counter, depositing money labeled under trust disbursement. My chest tightened. They hadn't just taken advantage of her. They thought they'd get away with it. At the back of the drawer, there was one more envelope. Sealed. I picked it up slowly. On the front, written in bold letters, Confidential, Attorney General Office, my hands went cold. I didn't even need to open it to understand. This wasn't just a trap. This was a case. A full investigation, prepared and waiting. I leaned back slightly, my mind racing. For 5 years, Nani Zubeida had been collecting all of this. Watching. Waiting. Planning. She wasn't weak. She was patient. And now, everything was ready. The truth was about to come out. I drove back home with the sealed envelope pressed tightly against my chest, like it was something fragile that could shatter at any moment. My mind was racing, but one thing was clear now, this wasn't just about protecting Nani Zubeida anymore. This was about exposing everything. When I entered the house, it was quiet again. Too quiet. I walked straight to her room. She was still lying there, weak but breathing more steadily than before. I placed a glass of water beside her and leaned closer. I know everything now, I whispered. Her eyes opened slowly. There was no fear in them, only calm. It's time, she said softly. Before I could respond, the front door opened. Voices. Familiar ones. Well, you actually stayed, a mocking voice echoed through the living room. My jaw tightened. Sanao. I stepped out of the room and into the hallway. There she was, standing like she owned the place, arms crossed, a smirk on her face. Behind her, Uncle Rashid walked in casually, holding a bag of food like nothing had happened. A little break was needed, he said, shrugging. Thought we'd come check in. Check in. They walked past me like I was invisible, opening cabinets, looking around, acting completely normal, as if they hadn't just abandoned an old woman to die. Something inside me snapped. I walked straight into the living room, pulled out my phone, and connected it to the TV. "What are you doing?" Sana frowned. I didn't answer. The screen lit up. The first image appeared, documents, signed and stamped. Her name. Her signature. Her theft. Her expression changed instantly. Then came the bank records. Transfers. Dates. Amounts. Uncle Rashid's face lost its color. The room fell silent. I stood there, saying nothing. Letting the truth speak for itself. Finally, I held up the sealed envelope. "This goes to court," I said calmly. Sana stepped forward, anger flashing in her eyes. "You wouldn't dare." I didn't move. "This isn't a threat," I replied. "It's evidence." For the first time, they looked nervous. "I have copies," I added. "So here's your chance." They stared at me, waiting. "To return everything you took," I said. "And never come near Nani again." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. For the first time in my life, they had no control. And they knew it. For a long moment, no one spoke. The room felt frozen, like even the air was waiting to see what would happen next. Then Sana let out a short, bitter laugh. "You think this scares me," she said, crossing her arms again, trying to regain her confidence. "It's just papers." I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up the remote and pressed play. The TV screen flickered, and a new video began. Security footage. Grainy, but clear enough. A car parked outside the house. The trunk wide open. Then, Sana and Uncle Rashid. Dragging out old antique boxes marked estate items. Loading them into the car like thieves in the night. The date stamp glowed at the bottom of the screen. The same day Nani Zubeida collapsed. Sana's face went pale. Uncle Rashid stepped back slightly, his voice shaking. Where did you get that?" "Neighbor's camera," I replied calmly. "The one you said was useless." Silence. This time, it wasn't just tension, it was fear. I stepped forward, holding the sealed envelope in my hand. "Here's how this ends," I said. "You return everything. Every rupee. Every property. You admit what you did, in writing." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Or I send this," I lifted the envelope slightly, "and everything you thought you'd get, disappears. Court cases. Criminal charges. Jail." Uncle Rashid was already sweating now, his confidence completely gone. But Sanal, she said nothing. And somehow, that silence said everything. I turned off the TV. The screen went black. So did their expressions. By the next morning, panic had already started. Sana sent a long email, calling it a misunderstanding. Uncle Rashid called again and again, apologies mixed with threats. I ignored all of it. Instead, I walked into Nani Zubeida's room. She was sitting up now. Awake. Stronger. "Did they see it?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "And they know the truth?" A faint smile appeared on her face. "Good," she whispered. A few days later, everything was finalized. Legal documents signed. Sanal and Uncle Rashid removed from the inheritance. Restricted from contacting Nani ever again. Everything gone. That evening, I stood on the porch, looking out at the quiet sky. For the first time in years, it felt peaceful. No lies. No betrayal. No fake family. Just truth. And as I looked back at the house, I realized something: this story didn't end with revenge. It ended with freedom.